Dear students, welcome to yet another lecture of your preparatory series for CLAT examination. And in this particular lecture, we will throw some light on the concept of synonyms. I'm assuming that most of you might already be familiar with the concept of synonyms and antonyms. However, in this particular lecture, we'll talk in detail about synonyms and some related aspects. So let's move on to the lecture outline. The lecture outline consists of synonyms. First, the introduction and the origin, the impact of technology and globalization in word formation these days, some of the common synonyms that you might have come across in literature, some tricks to figure out synonyms, that is root words and nuanced meanings, then three levels of meanings that words carry, that is connotative, denotative, and stylistic, and then types of questions for CLAT exam, that is direct, contextual, and indirect. We end off with some tips and practice questions and resources for vocab building. Let's begin. Now, what are synonyms? Now, synonyms are the words with identical or similar meanings. For example, the word big can also be written as large, huge, vast. Now, these are synonyms. Synonyms enhance clarity and precision in language and in creating meaning out of language. Some of the common synonyms and some of the common words are, just to give you an example, the word abandon can also be written as forsake or desert. Benevolent, the synonyms are kind, charitable. Candid could also be expressed as honest or frank. Diligent, hardworking, industrious. Eloquent is articulate or expressive, though the nuanced meaning might change contextually, that we are going to discuss later in this class. But these are broadly the words that have more or less the similar meaning. Some of the CLAT related questions that you can find. For CLAT, the level will go a bit higher. Let me clarify, students, that in this particular lecture, we go from the basic to the advanced level. Okay, so some higher level vocabulary, for example, the word ameliorate can also be written as improved or enhanced, or say obsolete. Okay, obsolete means something that is no longer in use. Okay, some of the words that you search on Google, you might come across written the word obsolete written whenever you search them. That means they are no longer in use. Just like humans, words have their cycle. If you study the origin of words etymologically, you see words have a cycle. They take birth and then they die. Now, when words die, they become obsolete. Okay. And what is etymology? The word I have just used, it is a study of the origin of words and how words acquire meaning. Now, the word obsolete can also be written as outdated or antiquated. Pragmatic. What is pragmatic? Something that is practical, realistic. Tenacious could be persistent, determined. Vindicate is justify or defend. Okay, so this level of words generally are very common in CLAT. Now, it is very important to understand synonyms from two perspectives. Number one, synonyms might not be asked directly, but the more command you have over the language, it's highly beneficial for you and for your preparation, because when you go and appear in the examination, the better understanding you have for any passage, the better it will be for understanding that what could be the correct answer. So there will be varying level of words that we are going to discuss in this lecture. Now, let's talk about the origin of synonyms. Now, synonyms derived from different languages often reflect the blending of cultures and histories in the development of a language. Here are some of the examples in English showcasing synonyms where one word is of Germanic origin from Old English or the related languages. The other is of Latin, Greek, or other foreign origin. Like English has a massive influence of Latin, Greek, and French. So, many of these words have derived either from Latin, Greek, or from other foreign origins. For example, ask is a word in Old English, but inquire, the word comes from Latin. The same with buy. which is of Old English, but purchase comes from Latin. English is again from Old English, but end is again from Old English, but terminate comes from Latin. Help is again from Old English, but assist comes from Latin. So that's the thing with origin of words. Okay. Some other examples, again, like we say, love is a word from Old English, but adore is from Latin. Happy from Old English, but joyous from French. And sad, like I said, from Old English again, but melancholy, it's from Greek. You can, in the very same way, see the difference between the words fire and conflagration, kingly, that is from Old English, regal from Latin, and royal, that is from French. The very same happens with fast, that is from Old English, and rapid, which is from Latin. Now, let's discuss the impact of technology and globalization. Like, we are living in a fast moving world. So, there is an impact of technology and globalization in at times changing the way we see words. Now, if you focus on the discussion here, first, technology driven words or synonyms. For example, emergence of tech jargon. Advances in technology introduce new terms that often overlap with existing ones. For example, text and message are now used interchangeably due to mobile communication. Now, if I ask you, hey, why don't you text me the address? And if I say, why don't you message me the address? They both will be meant the same thing. You'll understand the same thing. That means the word text and message are now used synonymously. And this change happened over time. Now, this might not have meant same 20 years later prior, but this meant the same, more or less the same in today's context. Now, second, we have platform specific language. That is, social media and digital platforms create their own lexicons. For example, tweet can be a synonym for post or update. Okay, tweet could be a synonym today for post or update, though it has nothing from the real meaning of the word tweet. However, it is a platform specific jargon. In the very same way, let's talk about the shifting context. For example, the words like cloud, as in cloud computing, have taken on new meanings, creating technical synonyms for traditional words. Though in cloud computing, the word cloud has altogether different meaning than the literal meaning of the word. So there is an impact of technology and globalization. Moving on, the second aspect is globalization and language borrowing. Okay, now in globalized world, people travel very often from one place to another, from one geographical location, from one time zone to another. So when people of various cultures mix, where there's a lot of cultural amalgamation, even language travels from one place to another. The cultural patterns travels from one place to another. Now see, globalization and language borrowing, cultural exchange, that's the first part. With increased cultural interactions, words from various languages are adopted into English, often as synonyms. For example, fiancé and betrothed are now synonymous. Okay, but the word fiancé has French origin. Okay, and betrothed are now synonymous and everyone would understand. International English. Global businesses standardize terms for clarity across borders, leading to new synonyms. For example, a resume, okay, which has come primarily from American English, and a CV, that is curriculum vitae, that is British English, are used interchangeably in job applications now. Okay, like I said, global businesses need a common platform, a common jargon all across the globe. So, the word resume and CV are now used interchangeably. We sitting here in India would always also use the word resume and CV interchangeably. Though we are neither in America nor in Britain, but still we know resume and CV and what are they. Third, loan words and blending. Globalization encourages the blending of languages, leading to hybrid terms like smog. So, smog basically is a portmanteau word. What's a portmanteau word? Portmanteau word is a word that is made from two words. For example, the word smog here, which is made of smoke plus fog. For example, the words like brunch, which is a combination of breakfast and lunch. So they've taken BR from breakfast and UNCH from lunch, and they've made a word named branch, which again happens to be a portmanteau word. Now, what it says, hybrid terms like smog, which may act as synonyms for traditional descriptions like pollution. Okay, so yes, this is an impact of globalization and language borrowing. Moving on, impact of trends and innovation. Okay, that is slang and informal language. Tech communities create slang terms that become popular synonyms. For instance, selfie. These days, selfie is a very common word, which is a word for self portrait. Okay, taking your own picture, as you might be aware. Okay, taking your own picture is selfie. Okay, a synonymous for self portrait. Evolving meanings, the word like stream, referring to online video, have developed synonymic relationships with broadcast due to their modern applications. Okay, for example, for YouTubers, the what word do they use these days? Okay, they very rarely say live broadcast, they say live streaming. Whereas when you see a cricket match on the TV, they would often use the word broadcast, not stream. Whereas on the YouTube, the entire vocabulary changes. However, be it a stream or be it a broadcast, that for example, if I say that that's a live stream and some other person says that's a live broadcast, we all will understand that it is meant the same thing, though the words used are different. So now these two words have been synonymous. Now this is it, the impact of technology and globalization that we are discussing. Okay, moving on. Now let's discuss some of the common synonyms that you might have come across in literature. I'm building this background for all of you, and then we start the practice right away. For example, Shakespeare's use of synonyms. As you might have read some of the drama of Shakespeare, one of the greatest dramatists of Elizabethan age, you might have read some excerpts from any of his famous drama or play. Now, if you see Shakespeare's use of synonyms, example, in Julius Caesar, Shakespeare uses grave and serious to convey a solemn tone. For example, it is a matter most grave and serious. Okay, now here grave and serious are used synonymously, but it conveys one idea. Okay, the impact is it enhances rhythm and adds layers of meaning to dialogue. All right, now come to Jane Austen. Jane Austen's subtle synonyms. Okay, Pride and Prejudice you might have heard of, and there are other famous works of Jane Austen as well, one of the most popular female writers, the English world has ever seen. In Pride and Prejudice, Austen uses amiable and agreeable to describe characters' qualities. For example, she is the most amiable of women, perfectly agreeable in manner. Now you see how beautifully this is expressed. Okay, and it demonstrates subtle differences in connotation to describe personality traits. Moving on, Charles Dickens, one of the famous novel writers of Victorian age, it says Dickens's descriptive richness. Example, in Great Expectations, Dickens writes, the air was damp and heavy, and it made me feel restless and uneasy. Okay, now here two words, restless and uneasy, they serve as synonyms to emphasize discomfort. Okay, someone is not comfortable. All right, and it creates a vivid atmosphere and emotional depth. Fourth, modern literature. J.K. Rowling's synonyms. Example, in Harry Potter, Rowling employs bravery and courage synonymously. For example, it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies and a great deal of courage to stand up to your friends. Now, the use of this word adds an emotional weight, okay, and it reinforces the thematic ideas. So, that's how you come across some common synonyms in literature. Now, for all these four authors, you might have read one or the other book either in your school or as a part of your leisurely pursuit, and that's how various synonyms are used. So synonyms are used even for, rather than substituting the words, they're even used for other purposes. For example, the way these writers have used. Now Moving on, now there is a trick to figure out synonyms. Okay, now there are two tricks that we are going to discuss in today's lecture. That is to understand root words and to understand nuanced meanings. Now, let us first discuss root words. Understanding roots is essential for grasping synonyms because it provides a foundational framework for deciphering the meanings of words and their subtle differences. What are the root words now? Root words are the words that origin from the same root. Hence, their meaning is somewhere always near, somewhere always related. Okay. For example, now why it is important to understand root words? Now in this particular section, we will discuss some of the root words that gives you an idea that having some bit of information, some bit of knowledge about roots can greatly benefit you guess the meaning. At times, it might happen that a question comes and you know nothing about the answer. You don't really know, you're not really sure about what could be the correct answer from the given four options. In that case, knowing the roots of the words, be it the main word that is asked or be it in the options, it helps you give an educated guess. Either it will help you right away in finding the correct answer, and even if it is not the case, even if you are not able to find the correct answer, knowing roots will help you take an educated guess about what could possibly be the correct answer. Now, why it is important to understand root words? First, recognizing core meanings. Roots reveal the fundamental meaning of a word, which serves as a guide to understanding its synonyms. Words derived from the same root often share a common idea but differ in nuance. For example, the root is cred, which means to believe, something about believing. Now, if you see from this particular root, we have seen three words here: credible, which is believed or trustworthy. For example, the news comes from the credible sources. Credulous, too willing to believe, gullible. Her attitude, which was credulous, didn't meet the expectations for the job role. Credulous, okay, used in the negative connotation. Too willing to believe or gullible, someone who can be tricked. Incredible, okay, used in a positive sense, in a positive connotation. Unbelievable or extraordinary. For example, we say incredible India. The performance of the team was incredible to the surprise of many. Okay, that means unbelievable or extraordinary. By knowing the root, you can see how these words are related and choose the appropriate synonym based on context. So that's the first reason why it is important to understand root words. Second, the second point in why it is important to understand root words is it helps us differentiate between the subtle variations. For example, roots help distinguish subtle shifts in meaning, tone, or usage among synonyms. For example, root dict, that means to speak. The root dict means speak. Now you must have heard words related to dict or from this particular root many times in your day-to-day language. For example, dictate, that means to command or order. Okay, she is dictating the terms of the company right now. Second, predict, to say something in advance. Okay, we are predicting a good show tomorrow. Third, contradict, to speak against or oppose. Okay, your actions contradict the rules of the company. Verdict, a spoken decision or judgment. The verdict is expected to be announced at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Okay, now recognizing the shared root makes it easier to understand the relationship between these words and their nuanced uses. For example, these are quite common words. However, if you come across words that you've never heard before, understanding or knowing the roots would somehow help you understand the subtle variations or the meanings. The next reason about the importance of root words is expanding vocabulary systematically. For like, what does this mean? Is that learning roots gives you the tools to decode unfamiliar words and their synonyms. Instead of memorizing synonyms, you can infer meanings by breaking down into roots, prefixes, and suffixes. For example, the root port means to carry. Synonym of transport. Okay, now include convey, that is carry or transfer, transfer, that is move from one place to another, ship, that is send goods via transport. Now here we are using the word ship as a verb, not as a noun. Now understanding port as the base meaning of carry helps in recognizing related words. Okay, and that's how you systematically expand the vocabulary and your understanding. And by attaching these links, it becomes quite easy to remember, because you know what is the most what is the toughest part in examination? It is to remember what you have studied during your preparation time. So when you systematically expand your vocabulary, when you link words in this way, this helps you expand the vocabulary systematically. The fourth reason is connecting words across context and registers. Okay, register is a type of language that is spoken in a particular context. Okay, when we study types of languages, for example, we have a dialect. So what is a dialect? Dialect is a type of language which is spoken in a particular region. The scope of dialect is much more lesser than that of a language, and dialect is not in a written form. It does not have a recognized grammar of its own, whereas language has. Now, in types of language, we have one subdivision, that is register. So register basically is again a subtype of language that is spoken in a specific context or in a specific area, even smaller than dialect. Okay, so let's see what it says. Roots help you understand how synonyms vary in formality, tone, or context. For example, root, scrib or script means to write. Now, we have certain related meanings. For example, inscription, that is formal or carved writing, ceremonial tone. Second, we have script, a written text that is informal or technical tone. Third, manuscript, a written document, academic or professional tone. Understanding the root helps in choosing synonyms appropriate for the context. Okay, so again, connecting words across various contexts and register. From one particular script, there could be very many words across different contexts. The next reason of understanding roots is enhancing precision in writing and speech. Now, how this works? Roots allow you to identify the precise synonym that fits your intended tone or meaning, avoiding ambiguity or miscommunication. For example, the root for bio. Bio is the root for life. Okay, anything that signifies life. For example, biology, that is the study of living organisms. Biography. Biography is a life story of a person. And if I ask you what is the difference between biography and autobiography, then what would be the answer? The answer is biography is a life story of one person written by themselves. Sorry, written by someone else. Whereas autobiography is the life story of a person written by themselves. Okay. For example, if Sachin Tendulkar writes his life story, then it will be autobiography. Symbiosis, that is living together in close association. Okay, symbiosis. Antibiotic means something that against life. Okay, now it refers to the antibiotic that kills bacteria, but antibiotic. Okay, so we have this prefix anti and then biotic. So bio is related to life. So that's how this word is understood. That is against life. That is something that kills bacteria, preferred to use, for the medicines that kills bacteria. So by understanding the root bio, you can accurately use these words in appropriate contexts and pair them with suitable synonyms. Now moving ahead, the next part is trick to figure out synonyms, that is nuanced meaning. So in the first part, we have seen how understanding root words enhances your understanding of words used in different contexts. Now, let's see how understanding nuanced meanings can help you figure out the correct synonym in the correct context. Not only from the exam point of view, it enhances your general awareness, general aptitude for language use as well. Now let's see what it says. Nuanced meaning refers to the subtle differences in connotation, intensity, tone, or context between words that are similar in meaning. While two words may describe the same general idea, their implications or the way they are perceived can vary. For example, slim and skinny both describe a thin person, but slim has a positive connotation, that is elegance or health, while skinny often carries a negative or critical tone, that is unhealthiness or lack of appeal. These subtle variations shape the emotional, social, or situational context of a sentence. Okay. For example, if I tell you that what is the difference between the two sentences? If I say Mahesh is a clever person, that's sentence number one. Sentence number two is Mahesh is a cunning person. Now, if you observe closely, the first sentence has positive connotations, whereas the second sentence has negative connotations. And these are known as nuanced meanings. Whereas the word clever carries a positive connotation, the word cunning carries a negative connotation. The same is happening here in this particular example of slim and skinny. The word slim has a positive connotation, whereas the word skinny has a negative connotation. Okay, now let's move. For example, if you see this table, there is a word given, there's a synonym given, and there's a tone given. For example, the word happy. If you use synonym joyful, it gives a positive tone, a positive connotation. Whereas the word angry, that is furious, gives a negative connotation. She's furious. So obviously that's not a very pleasant situation she is in. Sad, okay, the synonym melancholy gives a serious tone. The tone is quite serious. Whereas confused, perplexed, it's a neutral tone, neither positive nor negative. Surprised, astonished, again, kind of positive, but primarily gives a neutral tone. Angry, furious, again happens to be negative. All right. Now, why it is important to catch nuanced meaning, just like why it was important to understand the root words, there are several reasons. For example, the reasons could be accuracy in communication, that is accuracy in creation of meaning. What message do you want to convey? Nuance ensures that your message conveys exactly what you mean. Using the wrong synonym could unintentionally distort your intended meaning. For example, he's stubborn versus he's determined. Now see how meaning changes. Okay. Whereas the first sentence implies obstinance, the other implies perseverance. Okay. The first will be taken in a negative manner. The former will be taken in a negative manner. The latter will be taken in a positive manner. Tone and connotation. The emotional impact of your words depends heavily on nuance. This is particularly critical in literature, academic writing, or diplomacy where tone matters. For example, the manager was strict versus the manager was harsh. Both suggest enforcement of rules, but the tone differs significantly. Okay, strict is one thing, harsh is another. Cultural sensitivity. Language at times is used differently in different cultures. Okay, for example, in the American culture, people uh, prefer speaking directly. Okay, for example, an American person to deny to say something about someone's death would refer to a person as a dead person right away, or say that XYZ person is dead. Whereas in the British context or in the Indian context, we use euphemisms. We don't refer direct referring to the person or the incident. Okay, so what is the difference? This is a cultural difference, okay, in the use of language. Now, cultural sensitivity, let's see what it says. In cross-cultural context, nuances can prevent misunderstandings or unintended offense. For example, calling someone frugal is positive, that is economical. Okay, someone who thinks before spending money, whereas someone who is miserly is negative, stingy. That means someone who doesn't spend money at all, or who thinks a lot and spends money. Now, when you see the two meanings, they might sound synonymous. The two words might sound synonymous, but they carry different meanings altogether. Now, the next part is engaging writing. Capturing nuance in synonyms can enrich writing, making it precise, evocative, and engaging. It helps to convey deeper emotions or subtleties in characterization and storytelling. For example, the sky was gray versus the sky was ashen. Okay, now the latter one, the former, is perfectly normal and neutral, whereas the latter sentence, that is, the sky was ashen, it adds an air of desolation and drama. Okay, now that's how the meanings change. The next one, persuasive impact. For example, in rhetoric, choosing nuanced synonyms can frame arguments to influence an audience effectively. For example, he is persuasive, that is positive, whereas he is manipulative, that is negative. Now, see how massively the meaning is being changed. Okay, calling someone persuasive puts them in a positive light altogether, whereas calling someone manipulative makes them stand in a negative impact. So, these two words, though they could mean more or less the same, but have extremely different connotations. Both describe influence, but their ethical undertones differ. Rather, their ethical undertones massively differ. That's why it is very, very important to understand the nuanced meanings of the words. Okay. For example, now you see the three sentences and understand by yourself how the meanings are changing. Though the word firm, strict, and harsh would more or less mean the same, but see if this creates a different impression of a teacher in your mind. The first sentence, the teacher was firm with her students. Now, this implies a fair level of authority. The teacher was strict with her students, that is, it implies rigidity and possibly excessive rules. The third, the teacher was harsh with her students. Okay, now harsh implies severity. Okay, now all these all sentences giving the different meaning? Yes, they are. Though the words used sound similar, but the meanings are altogether different. And this is what happens when we understand the nuanced meaning. The meaning that we want to convey gets better and gets fairly delivered to the other person. Okay, now always remember that, students, that any word carries three levels of meanings. Now there are meanings attached to the words, and words carry meanings at different levels. Now there are three levels of meanings with any word. Every word carries meanings at three levels, that is, connotative meaning, denotative meaning, and stylistic meaning. Now let's see what these words mean. First, denotative meaning. The literal dictionary definition of a word stripped of emotional or contextual associations. You can remember this as D for word denotative and D for the word dictionary. Now, denotative meaning basically objective meaning, not subjective meaning. Okay, the difference between objective and subjective is subjective contains your own opinions, your own emotions. Okay, whereas objective means that does not have any subjective part. Okay, that is stripped of any personal judgments, any personal emotions, opinions. So, denotative meaning is an objective meaning, the dictionary meaning. For example, home. The denotative meaning, a place where one lives, typically a house or apartment. Okay. Now, the sentence, she returned to her home after a long day at work. Okay. Now, it refers to home as a physical location, as a place where a person lives. The word eclipse, denotative meaning, the obscuration of one celestial body by another. Okay, the lunar eclipse will last for approximately 3 hours. Okay, that is strictly scientific or factual usage. Why I'm giving you these two examples of home and eclipse? Because we'll be looking at these words in different contexts as well. So the first is denotative meaning. All right, now let's move connotative meaning. Now, the connotative meaning basically means the emotional, cultural, or associative meaning that a word carries beyond its literal definition. That is a connotative meaning, that is subjective or implied meaning. For example, again taking the same example, home. Connotative meaning, a place of comfort, warmth, and belonging. Perhaps a place with family. Okay, a place with your mother, your parents. Sentence, the small cabin felt like home more than any grand mansion ever could. Okay, now it evokes the feelings of nostalgia, safety, or a very strong sense of personal attachment. Okay, with a small cabin. Here, the word home is used connotatively. Whereas in the previous example, if you see, if we go back, here the word home is used denotatively, where we say she returned to her home after a long day at work. Okay, whereas in this particular sentence, you see, a small cabin felt more like home than any other grand mansion ever could. Here, the word home is used in a different sense. Now, this is how we use the word connotatively. Same is the case with the word eclipse. Connotative meaning a metaphor for overshadowing, decline, or loss of prominence. The sentence is her career's sudden eclipse was a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of fame. Okay, here the word eclipse primarily refers to the downfall of someone's career. Okay, and what it says, her career's sudden eclipse was a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of fame. Okay, now it has a symbolic meaning. Okay, here means downfall. So, this you need to understand. Stylistic meaning basically means the meanings that are created out of nowhere, say because of some popular culture. For example, if I say, hey, what's up? So here, what's up basically the word what's and up, when they come together and they mean what's happening in your life, so they don't have any connotative or denotative context, rather it's a stylistic meaning. Okay, we use it for some time, okay, for some years, okay, some fad, and then it goes away. The tone, formality, or stylistic context of a word influenced by it used in specific registers, that is formal, informal, poetic, technical, etc. Okay, appropriate and tone varies. All right, for example, the word home. Now, stylistic variations could be in formal context. The property was listed as a residential dwelling. Now, this simply means home. Informal, the place finally feels like home. Poetic, the weary traveler sought the embrace of his hearth and hearthstone. Here, hearth and hearthstone stylistically symbolize home. Okay, so that's how stylistic meaning differ. That means it's neither denotative nor connotative. It could either be a mixture of two or it could not be any. Okay, so that is stylistic meaning that is used in social media these days. Okay, when you use Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, this is used in this context these days. For the word eclipse, stylistic variations. Scientific, the solar eclipse will reach totality at 4:15 p.m. Literary, the hero's brilliance was briefly eclipsed by the villain's cunningness. Okay, and colloquial, the fight totally eclipsed the party vibe. Okay, overshadowed, here in colloquial sense it means overshadowed. Okay, so that is the stylistic meaning. So always remember, you will always find these three levels of meaning, and on the basis of how the word is used, the synonym might differ. Now, how this we are going to discuss in the practice set that we are going to do now. Now, type of questions for CLAT examinations. Now, in CLAT examinations, you might not find direct questions that well. Okay, you might find contextual questions or you might find indirect questions. And all these questions we are going to practice in this part of the lecture. Now, starting with some easy level of questions. Which word is a synonym for the word happy? A, sad, B, joyful, C, angry, D, lonely. So the answer is B, joyful. In the very same way, which is a synonym for big, so the answer here is B, large. Intermediate level, choose the word that is most similar in meaning to cautious. Now you must understand that even if a synonym question comes directly, it will not come as clearly written that tell the synonym of this word. They could use the phraseology like this: choose the word that is most similar in meaning to the word cautious. Okay, so it's careless, reckless, prudent, and hasty. That is prudent. Okay, last, which word is closest in meaning to persistent? Lazy, determined, temporary, or indecisive? That is determined. Okay, the next is advanced. Select the best synonym for ephemeral. Okay, so what is the best synonym for the word ephemeral? Eternal, fleeting, permanent, or stagnant? So it is fleeting. That's ephemeral. All right. And which word for ostracize? Okay, so ostracize means socially excluding someone here. So it's welcome, embrace, exclude, or celebrate. So here it is exclude. Always remember that at times, to confuse, they might give two or three words that might mean similar, but like we discussed, nuanced meaning. If you figure out the nuanced meaning, any one would be the correct answer. So there is always a mindset behind giving a question. Whenever a paper setter sets the question, they always have an underlying idea from which the question stems up. Okay, so at times it could be the nuanced meaning that is being asked. You thinking from a different perspective might not be able to catch that idea, and hence ends up taking the wrong answer. Now there could be some kind of contextual questions for CLAT exam as well. For example, the scientist's discovery was a truly remarkable achievement in the field of medicine. In contextual question, either one line can be given or one paragraph can be given. Okay, and one question could be asked. Now, here the help would be that you can understand in which sense the word is used, and it becomes quite easy for you to understand the meaning of the word, the intended meaning of the word. Now, which is the correct synonym for the underlined word remarkable? That is ordinary, exceptional, insignificant, and common. So, as it is quite evident from the use, the word would be exceptional. Okay, be exceptional. Second, the speaker's eloquent delivery captivated the audience throughout the lecture. Now, which is the correct synonym for the underlined word eloquent? That is articulate, clumsy, incoherent, or hesitant. So, like we can figure out from the meaning, it is giving a positive connotation. Okay, and all the options B, C, and D somewhat give the negative connotation. So, it becomes quite easy. Okay, however, not in all the contexts that we are going to discuss after a few slides, but here it's quite easy to understand that it means articulate. All right, now here contextual questions could also be like this, where you can give in a short paragraph and you're supposed to find the answers. For example, the author's latest work offers a profound exploration of human resilience, delving into the intricacies of emotional survival amidst adversity. With meticulous and attention to detail, the narrative unfolds with a sense of poignancy, leaving readers with both reflective and inspired by the nuanced portrayal of triumph over challenges. The story's understated elegance lies in its ability to balance raw emotion with intellectual depth, making it a masterpiece of contemporary literature. Each chapter reveals new dimensions, portraying characters that are deeply flawed yet immensely relatable. Now, here, what is the correct synonym for the underlined word profound? Okay, we have four options: superficial, insightful, trivial, obscure, that is insightful. And for the second, what is the correct synonym for the underlined word poignancy? That is humor, indifference, sentimentality, and detachment, that is sentimentality. So here, contextual meanings are to be figured out. Okay. Now, there could be some sort of indirect questions as well. Now, when I say indirect questions, what do I mean? Indirect questions means they don't outrightly refer to the word synonym. Rather, they write a question like this so that it becomes difficult for you, or perhaps it's not very easy or very clear outright that they're asking for synonyms. For example, which word best matches the meaning of the underlined word eloquent? The direct question, for example, let me read the direct question first. What is the correct synonym for the underlined word eloquent? Here, it is clearly visible that they're asking us to figure out the synonym, but the same question could be written in very many different ways. For example, which word best matches the meaning of the underlined word eloquent? Or choose the word that is most similar in meaning to eloquent. Or what word can replace the underlined word eloquent with the same meaning? Next, select the word that is closest in meaning to the underlined word eloquent. And the last, what word has a similar meaning to eloquent in this context? Now, here, one thing you must understand. Now, when you see the fourth option, select the word that is closest in meaning to the underlined word eloquent. Now, here, they might end up giving you some options that more or less mean the same as the word eloquent. Hence, the level of difficulty goes up because the students often get confused, because you might come across two options that would more or less mean the same. And here in this context, what helps you? What we have discussed, nuanced meaning. So whenever you find similar sounding words in a synonym question, always remember that the nuanced meaning will always differ, and that's the ideology before giving that particular question to you. Okay, and that's why it's very important to understand nuanced meanings of the words, especially in context of synonym questions, because at times you get confused very easily. Now, again, there are could be some other ways. Like I said, I told you in the previous example, this example also is the same. The base question is, what is the correct synonym for the underlined word provocative? Now this could be written in very many ways. Okay, for example, which word is most similar in the meaning to the underlined word provocative? Or what word can replace the underlined word provocative with the same meaning? And select the word that best matches the meaning of provocative. Or what word has the same meaning as provocative? Or which word is closest in meaning to the underlined word provocative? Like this, you can have some indirect questions. Okay. Now let us have a quick practice. Okay. Now we've discussed nuance meaning, root words, direct, indirect questions. Now let us very quickly practice before wrapping up the session. Now, root words, root questions type 1. Now, again, this is again a test of your root words, but in a different manner. How? Which of the following sentences uses the word derived from the root cred correctly? That means one option is correct, the three are not correct. The news article was highly credible as it cited multiple trustworthy sources. Okay. She was so credulous that she doubted even the most believable stories. Mhm. His performance was absolutely incredible, leaving the audience unimpressed. And D, the jury dismissed the evidence as credible, calling it unreliable. Now you can pause this video here and think of an answer. Now let's see what the answer could be. Now option A is correct. Okay, that means the word credible means believable or trustworthy. Okay, so this sentence correctly uses the word to describe the news article as reliable and supported by credible sources. Whereas the other three options, option B is incorrect. The word credulous refers to someone who is willing to believe things, often gullible. This sentence misuses credulous by suggesting doubt, which is opposite of its meaning. Section C, Again, incorrect. The word incredible means unbelievable or extraordinary, but in a positive sense. Okay. Here, incredible is misused as it conflicts with the idea of believing the audience or leaving the audience unimpressed. It should be leaving the audience impressed rather. And option D, the word credible is incorrectly used here. If evidence is credible, it means it is trustworthy, but the sentence contradicts this by stating it was dismissed as unreliable. So this could be one way of, questions. Again, which sentence uses a word derived from the root dict correctly? Okay. The teacher asked the student to predict the future by commanding him to obey instructions. The defendant's statement seemed to contradict the evidence presented by the prosecution. The judge announced the dictate after carefully reviewing all the evidence. And D, the weather forecast failed to provide an accurate verdict about the storm. Okay, so we've discussed this route. You can pause the video and again think of an answer. Now let's very quickly move. Option A. Now the word predict means to say something in advance, often based on knowledge and reasoning. This sentence incorrectly uses predict to describe commanding someone, which is unrelated to its meaning. Therefore, option A is incorrect. Let's come to option C. The word dictate refers to commanding or ordering, not a decision or announcement made by a judge. The correct term for a spoken judgment in this context would be verdict. So option C is also incorrect. Option D, the word verdict refers to a formal judgment, usually in a legal context. It does not relate to weather predictions, making this usage incorrect. So we are left with all but option B. The word contradict means to speak against or oppose something. And here this sentence uses it correctly in context of conflicting statements or evidence. Now, which of the following sentences uses a word derived from the root bio correctly? Okay, a student specialized in biology, focusing on the study of non-living objects. Her biography detailed the events of her life, including her rise to success. Antibiotics promote the growth of bacteria, making them more resistant over time. D. The term symbiosis refers to organisms that live separately without interacting. Okay, so here you can figure out the answer by yourself. Okay, the answer basically is B. All right, now root questions type 2. Which of the following words is the best synonym for benevolent? Okay, now for all these questions I'll be discussing the answers. However, you can pause it and you can pause the video and think of your answers before going for the real answer. So analyzing using roots, the word bene means good or well. So benevolent basically means it's a combination of bene and volens. Okay, so option A is rather opposite. Okay, option B kind, that is benevolent. Option C is unrelated, and like we know the word arrogant is something different. And option D is suspicious. Okay, that do not fit the meaning derived from bene. So option B is the correct answer. Now, which of the following is a synonym of transport? That is deliver, create, destroy, or borrow. Now here again you see the root port means to carry. So transport means to carry across. Now option A, deliver, matches the meaning of transport, which is the correct answer. Option B, that means that is unrelated to the concept of carrying. C, opposite in meaning, and D is not connected to the idea of carrying something. Okay, so that's how it is. Again, which word is the best synonym for eject? Retain, remove, add, or install. So again you say ject means to throw. E plus ject, okay, to throw out. All right, so here the correct answer is B, remove. Okay, option A basically is opposite to eject. Okay, B, remove, fits the meaning, that's the correct answer. C, add, again it contradicts the meaning of eject. And install again is opposite action of removing. So the correct answer is, that is B, remove. Okay, now what are the contextual questions that you might come across? Okay, now here the entire sentence, the entire paragraph here, which is taken from the Times of India. Pilloried at the start of his first stint in the White House for being unprepared for the office, Trump has been presidential even before taking oath of office this time. Okay, now you can read it, pause the video, and then come to the question. Now, which of the following is the best synonym for the word pilloried? You see, pilloried is the first word here. Okay, however, it's not always that the first word will be asked. There could be any word. Okay, there could be any word. All right, now pilloried is praised, criticized, ignored, and supported. Now if you read the first line very carefully, you will understand the nuanced meaning, that in which sense the word is used. Okay, so here it is criticized. Okay, Donald Trump was criticized. Again, navies of 9 Indo-Pacific countries, including India, are taking part in a multilateral exercise, La Perouse, hosted by France in strategic Straits of Malacca. I'm sorry. Now, if you see the last sentence from the second last line, with forays by the Chinese Navy in the region rising, the straits are under increased focus. Okay, so it's about the naval exercise hosted by the French Navy. Now, which of the following is the best synonym for the word forays? If you see here, with forays by the Chinese Navy in the region rising, you can very well figure out what could possibly be the meaning. That is attacks. Okay, being hostile. Same here, if you see the last sentence of this particular paragraph from the third last line, the emerging scenario may also lead to cessation of price discounts on Russian oil. Okay, here cessation basically means pausing. All right, now type 2 contextual questions. Okay, here the CEO's bold decision to restructure the company paid off, leading to record profits. Whereas the second context, the bold colors in the painting made it stand out in the gallery. Now, in the first one, CEO's decisions were daring, whereas in the second, the colors were vivid. So, in both contexts, the answers changed. Okay, now you can pause those and think before coming to the answers. In the very same way, the manager's sharp remarks, whereas her sharp outfit. Now, the answer is the first sharp basically means harsh, whereas the second sharp could possibly be fashionable. The soldier received a stern reprimand. Okay, that's the first one. Now, the teacher gave a stern look. Now see the answers. The first stern was strict. The second stern is angry. How contextually meanings change. Okay. Now, what you can do, there are some tips to have mastery over synonyms. For example, read widely so as to understand the nuanced meanings. That is, encounter new words through newspapers, novels, and legal texts. Use a thesaurus, that is, dictionary or perhaps a dictionary of synonyms and antonyms. Explore word alternatives and their context and try to use them in your daily language. Group similar words, that is, organize words with similar meanings for better recall. Fourth, practice sentences, apply new words in writing and speaking, and solve mock tests. Just like some of the questions that I've given you, there are many mock tests available online. You can solve mock tests. That also adds to your knowledge, because synonyms are the part of the language. The more you practice, the more better your command will be over the language. And at last, before we finally conclude the session, some resources for vocab building, that is online platforms like Quizlet and Memrise. I'm sorry. These platforms provides a lot of quizzes, a lot of resources for vocabulary building. Book, there's a very famous book, Word Power Made Easy by Norman Levice. The book actually is considered one of the best book when it comes to students, preparing for any exam that evaluates their linguistic aptitude. Okay, even for the students of CAT and other competitive exams, the book is highly recommended. That is Word Power Made Easy by Norman Levice. And some of the apps like vocabulary.com, GRE flashcards, these apps actually helps you greatly. Now students, in this particular lecture, we tried to study about synonyms and the way they can be learned, okay, and how there are different ways you can memorize synonyms, like root words, nuanced meaning, and how along with time technology impacts the words, their formation and their usage. So I hope you have enjoyed today's lecture. I'll see you in another lecture. I hope your preparation is going on fine. Thank you so very much.